Hi, beautiful friends. I want to have a conversation that I've been having in my VIPs and I've been having on the back end and the DMs around bold moves, around the time periods of my life where I was chasing symptoms and I was so confused by everything. And, I was doing this whole loop around getting lost in diagnoses and letting that mean I will never get out of this, especially because of my trauma, right? And I didn't even identify with my trauma at the time. So I want to speak to that for people that are like, okay, maybe if I don't have trauma, like, what if, does Unbreakably Bold apply to me? Does the VIP intensive apply to me? And I want to speak to that today. So if you're new to my world, hi. My name is Laura Patricia Martin. Say hi in the comments if you're watching the replay, where you're coming in from, because I love to connect with you and just actually keep social media social, because I know there's a lot of noise on here. And if you're an old friend, say hi, because you're an old friend and that's what we do. But today's conversation, if it resonates with you, please share it with someone. I will be talking about some offers we have on hand. And I do believe in kind of sharing the content that resonates with us so we can have conversations with the people that matter to us. And it really does help grow this community organically, which is what we're all about here in a little feminine, little safe little bubble. So when we're jumping into this conversation, I want to share my personal experiences because I know that is where I learn from my mentors the most, and just be open and vulnerable with you. And so I remember when I first started my healing journey and going about wanting to be better, right? So I grew up and there's little t trauma, big T trauma, and I didn't want to claim that, so much so that I remember when my naturopath brought it to my attention, and when I had chronic health pains, when I had addictions, when I had eating disorders, when I was stuck in domestic violence and didn't see a way out, like when I had all of this stuff going on, and instead of looking at the core root, I was chasing symptoms. And so what she brought to the table was, hey, do you want to talk about how all of your health issues are related to the trauma in your life? And at that time, I ghosted her after, because I didn't want to identify with the word trauma, even though I had known it. I had grown up in addictions. My mom had passed from addictions, again, domestic violence, sexual assaults, things like that. And if this triggers you, you can turn it off and check some of our other things going on and tap in there. But I remember getting lost in these symptoms, right? So I got into health because I just didn't want to keep binge drinking anymore, and I didn't want to use hard drugs, and I didn't want to be this shell of a human that I thought I was. And I was actually afraid of the life that I was living. I was afraid I wouldn't make it to 25 years old. I was afraid of the way that I was living, but I didn't quite know how to stop. So I was like, let me find a purpose. And a friend suggested, why don't you go learn about nutrition? I was like, sure, why not? Let me go learn about nutrition. Why not? And I found myself, as I was getting healthier, I did get enough confidence to leave that relationship. But as I was getting healthier, because I hadn't actually dealt with what was happening inside of me, I then went and started to become obsessed with nutrition. And the more obsessed with nutrition I became, the more sick I got, the worse my IBS got. My skin got horrible and all these rashes. I shared it on today's post if you want to go look at that. Doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. My period was lost for about 5 years. It took 6.5 to get it back. It was this whole mess of things going on. And so I started to specialize in the gut-brain connection and learning about how my anxiety and my depression were linked to what was happening in my gut. And as I started to address these things cerebrally, right, I would study them. I would eat, genius foods, Max Lugavere way. I actually went back to school to become a specialist in this arena. And the more I learned, the more obsessed I got. And it wasn't healthy, and I was stuck in fight or flight. And it wasn't until I was standing in front of a room full of 100 people giving a seminar around eating for our mental health and things of this nature, when I had a giant skin rash that was taking over my entire face, that I realized wow, I should really take my own advice. And so that led me into leaning into this trauma work and understanding what trauma actually is. So if you're new to that word, and it's not so new because we often talk about it, we have a lot of things on the internet that talk about trauma, but trauma isn't just a life event that we like to deem it as such. Trauma in and of itself is how your body responds to an event, and that is individual, right? So I can have big T trauma and my body can react in a certain way. And then when I look at someone else's big T trauma, my body won't react the same way. And this is where we start to get in that judgment zone of people's drama and traumas and saying it's not that bad and saying, oh, like I can't even bring my issues to the table, or who am I to enroll into a program like Unbreakably Bold when I haven't had these big life events, and yet my nervous system is getting in the way of me having the success that I want, having the relationships that I want, having the consistent health that I want. That's where we actually have to look at it. Trauma is just the way our body stored an event. And so that could be big T trauma. That could be a heartbreak. That could be divorce. That could be an illness. That could be a car accident. And that's often when I was working in gut health, what we would tie it back to was some type of life event that set their body into this state of fight or flight that they were never able to get out of and get stuck in this loop. And so the way that I do work, the way that I create my programs, the way that I do my one-on-ones, the way that I walk through this journey is really pinpointing 3 key areas. And so we walk through the steps SHE, when we're looking at Unbreakably Bold. So S being self-knowledge. So we start with understanding what your nervous system is, how it responds to things, what trauma has been impacted, and if trauma doesn't land for you, states of arousal. Because when we're looking at something, it's when we want to become unbreakable, when we want to become safe, that's in our nervous system. And if we don't start looking at how our nervous system is responding to things in the present moment, to get safety in the present moment, it's going to be hard to build resiliency and boldness into the future. So that's the foundations. We look at nutrition, we look at the metabolism, we look at how to really identify what states we are within our body so that we get safe. And then we move into self-healing, which is the big part, because what I realized a lot was when I was going through, say, therapy, or when I was going through, CODA or Al-Anon, which are like 12 steps for support groups for people that are in relationship with addicts or have parents from addicts and things of that nature. When I was noticing these things, it was all cerebral. And so when I'm in these practices of cognitive behavioral therapy, of just, looking at my family dynamics, I left feeling even more triggered. Because it was good for those moments to understand what my past was, because I needed to understand how it was impacting my present, and that's very good. But what it was missing was, how do I get safe right now? How do I get safe in this moment so that I can feel where my body is at and I can build resiliency for the future, so I can alchemize my story, my narrative, my victimization that I feel within my body, because that is how I felt. That is why I kept picking self-sabotaging relationships. That's why I kept, using hard drugs to give me this false high. That's why I kept drinking just to feel like I belonged with people around me, because I was so self-conscious. That's why I was stuck in an eating disorder cycle, because I didn't know and I feared what my body was doing, so I became very obsessed with it. And that's a thing we can get lost inside of. And so when we're looking at the self-knowledge piece, we understand, we look at the science, all the kind of things like that really helps when we've been through stuff. And then we look at the proper healing of, how do I alchemize my grief and turn it into gold? How do I really change my story and be that phoenix rising and rise from the ashes, and use this to create this momentum and this self-trust and this confidence to move forward? And so that we step into that by looking at, what is my confidence? What is my identity? How do I start to rewire that from this old narrative? Right? Like for me, it was like I was always the angry one. I was the partier. I couldn't hold commitments. I always was in crappy relationships. You would be the person passing out from drinking so much. Like that was my old identity, but it no longer fit. And so I'm walking you through that step-by-step process, how to shift your identity, how to shift what your narrative in your nervous system has been telling you. Because at the end of the day, our attachment styles, our self-sabotage, our tendencies, and our habits, those are just the modalities that have kept us safe. And so it takes step-by-step practice to rewire that. That goes beyond talk therapy. And then we move into the embodiment of this when we move into the regular everyday life, right? So how can I, step into leadership and not be triggered? How can I step into my next relationship and be the safest place for that person to land, to come to talk about their life struggles, to talk about their triggers, and feel so safe in having that conversation? How can I, sit at my desk and not get plagued by the fear of failing at something that I really care about, so then I just don't do it? How can I overcome that? Because I'm the embodiment of this bold, unbreakable force, putting 2 feet in on my energy and really rising from the narrative that I've been stuck inside of. Like, that is what I witness with my clients over the years. It's so much more than what do I eat, what's my morning routine, and what are the checklists I have to do. It's really focusing on how the hell do I get safe? How do I look at what's going on in my body so that I can feel safe, so I can go after my dreams, so I can have these conversations, so I can have the love that I want, so I can travel the world and I can open up these portals into my life and feel safe no matter what. That is something that becomes this unbreakable force. When you are so safe in your nervous system, in your body, you forget that the war against your body was even a thing. You forget about the patternings and the drinking and the drugs and the eating. Like, for me, from personal experience, I know that was a part of my story, but I can't identify with that. When pictures pop up on like Facebook Time Hop, I'm like, I don't know. I can't relate. And I give that girl so much compassion because she was just in survival. And so that's what I've noticed with my clients who, they have mortgages, they have homes, they have businesses that are thriving, and they're like, why do I still, when I get activated by something, all of a sudden explode? And so we work through that so that they can ultimately have this career, so that they set the tone within their family dynamics and become this safe space. Or my clients that are, roadblocked in their careers, they sit down at their desk and it's like, I have this big dream and I want this freedom and I want this life that feels so safe, that I feel so confident in. And then when I sit down and I'm building it, I all of a sudden have brain fog and, my ADHD comes out, and we really reprogram the nervous system, because it's not to say ADHD doesn't exist, but we get to use that as a tool to work with. We get to use that as a way to amplify our life and lead us and get more into alignment. And especially when we're eating in a way that regulates our nervous system, ADHD, anxiety, depression, all that kind of stuff, that's just neuroinflammation, or it's environment and life events, right? Like, it's an either or conversation. Usually it's both. When we actually eat in the right way to align with that, and we have our routines and our lifestyles that are set up to downregulate our nervous system, that neuroinflammation actually goes down. So when we sit down at our desk, that brain fog and that fear and that, quote unquote self-sabotage, getting upper limiting effect goes away. And that's what I love seeing in my work, that it's so much more than like, let's write down our feelings about our past, let's give forgiveness, and let's move forward, which is usually what I only found when I was in therapy or when I was doing the 12 steps. It was like, let's just do these steps and hopefully become to this resilient thing. But what I found in all of these practices was this coming home to yourself, was this invitation to be who you're meant to be, to have this conversation, to expand all that you're meant to be and become this unbreakably bold version of yourself. That's how we came up with this program title. That's what you get out of this program, is this step-by-step process of, okay, let me get this science, let me get this self-knowledge, let me understand what's happening in my body. So I have this information, I have this toolbox of knowledge, so it's no longer feeling like, oh, when my body and my brain act this way, what the fuck? It's sitting there and knowing, oh, my body is acting this way, or my brain is acting this way because of this. And then we go into the healing part of it. So my body's acting this way, so here's what I'm gonna do about it. I'm going to regulate my blood sugar levels. I'm going to downregulate my nervous system. I'm going to stimulate my vagus nerve. I'm going to really start to release the narrative of what this all means about me. And then we get into the embodiment, because now we know what's going on. Now we're healing it. Now we have to trust it. And that's where the consistency comes in. That's where the growth comes in. That's where the expansion comes in. And that is when the voice that was taken because of life events, because of how we were raised, because of things that have happened, that voice that we question ourselves and where we belong and our worth, we reclaim it. We own it. We walk with it. We become this holy heck, who is that woman kind of energy. And so inside of Breakably Bold, the 8-week immersion, this is what we're doing. I am walking you step by step by step. Let me pull up the modules actually right now to kind of give them to you. Step by step through all of this. We're going to set with goal intention. We're going to talk about becoming unbreakable. We're going to be talking about, and that's kind of understanding where your symptoms are being expressed and what's happening. And then we're going to nourish ourselves and understand what that is. We're going to talk about mirrors, which is healing our triggers and our anxiety so that you can release those self-sabotaging ways and understand that it's just self-protection and all of these beautiful things. Then stepping into identity, which is where we heal that inner child and we understand when that's coming up, so we stop dancing into these life scenarios of triggering each other and having this stuff and showing up in this new, because you're never too old to reparent yourself. Like, it's never too late to do that in your life, and you get to change it. And it's been my life's work to do this, and it's healed my chronic health issues. It's healed my anger. It's healed my addictions. It's healed my eating disorders. Like, doing this work has healed so much. And then we move into the confidence, which is, we stop playing small. Like, how many of you can relate to that feeling of like, I'm not showing up in the full capacity that I know I should be, in this bold version of myself, in this loud, confident force that, creates more income and influence and growth. Like, when we play small, we feel it and it feels like this crunch, but yet we upper limit ourselves being like, but who the fuck am I to do that? Who the fuck are you not to? Right? So we're going to work through how to claim that confidence and understand that that's a nervous system match, right? To move past that, to really go to those edges of your nervous system in a safe way so that we can gain this confidence and this magnetism and growth for our communities, for our families, for our friends, for the people that we care about most. Because when we mirror this within ourselves, we mirror it out to the world and we invite others to do the same. And then we move into pleasure, letting joy interrupt our sadness, interrupt our story, interrupt all the things. Pleasure leading my life has changed my entire life. And it's so funny because I do this with my clients too, where it's like, what would it feel like to enjoy foods that you like, or, to wear the clothes that you want to wear, or to speak in a way that feels so good to you and so aligned and so authentic to you? Like, what would that feel like? And because it has been so diminished and cut down and not frowned upon necessarily, but like, it's not common. Like, when you see a woman that is led by pleasure and joy, I remember when that used to trigger the fuck out of me. And I'd be like, who does she think she is to dress in that way, to show up in that way, not realizing she was honoring herself? And when we can find joy in our food, when we can find joy in our home, when we can find joy and pleasure in our relationships, the sky's not even the limit. And sometimes that fear comes up, but like, will I stop eating the ice cream, or will I, stop doing this and doing these things that taste so good? Like, your body will let you know. Your body is led by pleasure, and pleasure is within balance and regulation and these tools that feel so good. And then we're going to finalize everything with consistency. These are the strategies for long-term success. Like I said, when I would go into therapy and it would cut things off and I'd be like, now I'm fully triggered and I don't want to go back to therapy because this doesn't feel really good when I'm leaving and it's just too much. It's like, what are the tools and the strategies to have consistent results over a lifetime? This is how I created this life. This is how my clients have gone on to have the relationships of their dreams, how they've healed their health pains, how they've lowered their blood pressures, how they've gotten off of their medications, from anxiety medications to, antidepressants to Valium, like to get off these medications so that they can actually feel present in their lives and stop living through their diagnosis and their narratives built off of the life experiences. So this is an 8-week journey. It is so soulful, so grounded, so beautiful. And I don't know when we're going to run this again. And I don't say that as like a pushy little sales thing. Like, I genuinely don't know. I don't know if we're going to run it again. But I would love to invite you on this first round of it. Because these are the practices, these are all the tools that have helped me become this version of me. And I know a lot of you have witnessed that over the year of healing my eating disorder, of helping my clients get off their medications, of helping my clients heal their chronic health pains, and then go on to create banging businesses. This is how I've helped my entrepreneur girlies show up in this bold, brave version, and now we're putting it into a step-by-step process inside an 8-week immersion. And you get an intensive VIP with me, you get a welcome package, you get all these tools that you can use. It's a high-touch program. That's why the price point is high. It's currently $1,997. Extended payment plan available if you want to jump into this. Early bird does end on Wednesday. And from there, we get to really navigate life circles. So it's going to be 8 weeks. It's going to be beautiful. There's going to be space in between for immersion. There's going to be Monet. There's going to be community to tap into, realizing you don't have to walk this journey alone. It is truly my baby, my little baby that I'm going to bring to this world, and I really, really want to invite you to it, to regulate the nervous system, to step into your bold power, to step into the bravest version of you, to step into this unbreakable force. Because your anxiety, your depression, your ADD, your trauma, your life experiences, none of that defines you. And it is time to step away from that narrative. It is time to release that so that you can claim your boldness in this world and claim this understanding that you've walked yourself through all of these things. Now it's time to regulate your nervous system so it no longer triggers you, so it no longer breaks you or gets in the way of your life and gets in the way of what you're truly meant to do. And I'm going to be walking with you on that journey. So if you're interested in joining me, all you have to do is click the little thing down here and go up into my bio, and you'll see the application there. If you're looking for more of a VIP one-on-one vibe, I do have a few one-on-one spaces available. We can jump into a VIP session to hash that out, to go through a strategy session to come up with a personalized plan for your nervous system, and then from there we can see what would be the best fit. But that's where I would say it's the first good step to tap into is a 55-minute one-on-one VIP session with me, and we can start to put that strategy together for you and then have a conversation on what the next right step is. That is all I have for you today. If you know anyone that could benefit from hearing this conversation, from how to really become this unbreakably bold version of themselves, how to release the story that sometimes we get stuck inside of, if you know someone that could benefit, I would freaking love it if you could share it. Share it with someone you care about. Share it with someone you want to have a conversation with. And I will see you somewhere on the internet. Thank you. Happy healings.